In the summer of 1940, a small group of young men and their aircraft were all that seemed to stand between the British people and invasion by the Nazi war machine. In the months that followed, the few of RAF Fighter Command would engage the Luftwaffe in savage aerial combat over southern England. In the summer of 1968, some of those aircraft were in the skies again to help film the classic British feature film Battle of Britain. Now, using unseen footage from the production, this series will tell the real story of the Battle of Britain. After fierce fighting over the Channel and South Coast, Goering is now ready to launch an overwhelming assault on the aerial defenses of Great Britain. RAF Fighter Command is about to enter a fight for survival.
I intend to continue the air war against the English homeland more intensively. The German Air Force is to overcome the British Air Force with all means at its disposal.
German military intelligence estimated that the RAF had only 300 fighter aircraft left, concentrated in the south of England. The Luftwaffe seemed on the brink of achieving the air superiority needed for a seaborne invasion of Britain. It was a grossly over-optimistic assessment, but it was exactly what Goering wanted to hear. The Luftwaffe was now expected to smash British fighter strength in a series of massive assaults, beginning on the 13th of August, codenamed Adlertag, Eagle Day. The day scheduled for the start of the attack dawned with cloud and mist over the Channel. Goering postpones the assault, but the order fails to reach some units. Already in the air, they do not receive the recall signal. Bomber formations fly towards England without their fighter escorts. The RAF are waiting. Angered by the muddled start of the campaign, Goering orders the attack to go ahead after all. There is heavy fighting over southern England. But Goering is determined to launch a properly coordinated attack as soon as the weather permits. August the 15th dawns fine and clear. 3 vast air fleets, over 2,500 German aircraft, prepare to make the attack that will finally wipe out Fighter Command. For Goering, the decisive day of the air campaign was at hand. From the High Command in Berlin to the Luftwaffe airfields in France, confidence was high. But most pilots were unconcerned with grand strategy.
Wenn ich mich recht erinnere, sollen da also 1600 Einsätze geworden sein. Wir haben das gar nicht so besonders empfunden. Es war schon ein Großeinsatz, aber wir haben das nicht so als Adlertag oder Eagle Day gesehen, sondern war eben ein ganz normaler Einsatz mit etwas mehr Flugzeugen.
The plan was simple. Bombers would strike at RAF airfields, aircraft factories, and war essential infrastructure. Massed fighter escorts would fly high above the bombers, attacking with the advantage of height when RAF fighters attempted to intercept the bombers. At 11:30 a.m., Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers with a heavy escort of Me-109s crossed the channel and attacked the forward airfields of Lymph, Hawkinge and Manston. "54 Squadron Spitfires are scrambled, alongside Hurricanes from the 501 Squadron. These units will be in almost constant action over the following days. But the dive bombers hit buildings and hangars and sever the cables carrying power to 3 of the radar stations on the Kent coast. There is now a blind spot in the warning system. With the Luftwaffe command convinced that British fighter strength is now concentrated in the south, it sends Air Fleet 5, based in Norway, across the North Sea. The fleet of Heinkel bombers head towards the northeast coast of Britain. Confident there will be no opposition, they fly without Me-109 fighter escort. But the British radar stations that face out across the North Sea have registered their approach. The information is passed to the fighter squadrons of 13 Group. As the German bombers approach the Tyneside coast, the weather is fine and clear. Spitfire pilots of 72 Squadron, vectored into position by ground control, spot the Heinkel bombers as they approach. From a perfect attack position, the Spitfires strike, diving out of the sun. Hurricanes from 79 and 605 Squadrons join the fray. In desperation, the bombers jettison their bombs and turn back towards their distant bases. German air gunners fight back desperately, hammering away with their 7.9mm machine guns as swarms of British fighters buzz past at 300 miles per hour. They could be brutally effective, as some were to discover.
I can recall one bomber interception. In this particular instance, the bombers were coming in and we were at right angles. I turned in with my flight and told the CO I was going ahead on attack, and then I'd go round to the rear. We knocked down 2 in the head-on attack and went round to the rear, and I went in after my third one. I went in really close, and I went in sort of, 150 yards or so, and of course he got me.
Severely mauled, with 30 aircraft lost and many badly damaged, Air Fleet 5's participation in the Battle of Britain was over. 13 Group's casualties suffered only 3 damaged fighters. But over southern England, meanwhile, a more finely balanced battle was raging. As German bombers in the northeast struggled back to their bases, more German aircraft gathered over the Pas de Calais to launch raid after raid across the Channel. Bombers, escorted by large numbers of 109s, strike at targets throughout southeast England.
24, 50 plus, speed 44, northwest W for William 2239.
RAF fighters battle to break up incoming bomber formations, but cannot penetrate the massive fighter escort. The bombers reach their targets. The airfield at RAF Martlesham is bombed and put out of action. Further raids sweep in, swamping 11 Group's ground controllers.
2239, 2239.
But still, each incoming raid is met by heavily outnumbered RAF fighters, attempting to hit the bomber formations. To the west, large formations of aircraft are detected heading for Portland and Southampton. Squadrons from 10 Group rise to meet them. Nearly 150 fighters throw themselves at the Luftwaffe formations as fighting spreads along the English coast.
Not knowing what the hell was happening in the sky around me, I just did not know. I hadn't seen anything, I didn't know what had been happening. Then all of a sudden, the sky was full of things with black crosses on them. And we exploded like a bomb. We went in every direction imaginable, trying to avoid them.
It became a 1-to-1. After all, you were attacking an enemy aircraft, or he was attacking you, in which case you were trying to get out of his way. But if you were attacking him, you concentrated on him. And of course, he was going all over the sky trying to evade you. And you all, apart from the two of you, you got separated from everybody else.
I thought, well, this is it. And I turned my guns on, I fired at him, and he turned over and dived down towards the sea. This is fantastic, because before we went up, I was absolutely convinced that I would be killed.
And when you disposed of the chap you were attacking, you looked around and you couldn't see another aircraft in the sky because everybody had scattered off in different directions.
But a lot of time was spent trying to get into the right, even when you sighted your bombers. You didn't want to be below them, you wanted to be above, you wanted, if possible, to be into the sun. So a lot of time was spent on following your squadron commander around the sky, trying to get into a favourable position to attack.
I always reckoned I was one of the worst pilots in the squadron. And having shot something down myself, I thought, this is something. But as I followed him down, another bomb got behind me and started shooting at me, but he was a terrible shot, and he never hit me at all. This man overshot me, so I finished up in the same position behind the second one. So I settled down behind him and I shot him down as well.
Also, mein erstes Feinderlebnis, wir haben in Staffelstärke mit 12 Maschinen im Kanal geübt und haben plötzlich gesehen, dass eine englische Staffel auch vor Dover geübt hat. Natürlich haben wir aus dem Übungsflug sofort einen Feindflug gemacht. Wir hatten ja immer Munition am Kanal dabei und haben die englische Staffel angegriffen. Und ich habe als Ziel gehabt den sogenannten Weaver. Der flog hinten rein.
The fighting over the Solent and Portland is fierce. 2 Hurricane squadrons scrambled from Exeter are heavily engaged. Losses on all sides are heavy. After an afternoon of furious and continual combat, the Luftwaffe launched their final raids of the day against airfields at Croydon and West Malling. The Luftwaffe had used almost 2,000 aircraft in repeated sorties in their effort to destroy fighter command in the air and on the ground. They have caused considerable damage to RAF airfields and facilities, but have suffered heavily in the process. The Luftwaffe loss rate was so high on this day that German air crews would refer to it as Black Thursday.
Als Soldat, den man ja war man sich im Klaren, dass es Verluste gibt. Und die Verluste musste man eben akzeptieren. Das ist nun mal im Krieg so. Und ich kann mich eigentlich nicht erinnern, dass das irgendwie sagen wir, auf den Kampfwillen und auf den Kampfgeist uns ausgewirkt hat. Wir waren nach wie vor entschlossen, die Kämpfe zu bewältigen und auch siegreich zu sein.
Und damals waren wohl in 2 Wellen über England mehr wie 1000 deutsche Maschinen. Und dieser Tag hat sowohl auf deutscher Seite als auch auf englischer Seite viel Verluste gebracht, aber wir kamen wieder ungeschoren durch an dem Tag.
The attacks on RAF airfields and installations continue. RAF training manuals, with their out-of-date tactical lessons, are being torn up. Pilots replace complex, detailed regulations with their own simpler mantras. Wait until you see the whites of their eyes. Always turn and face the attack. Never fly straight and level in the combat area for more than 30 seconds. Go in quick, punch hard, get out. Flight Lieutenant James Nicholson, badly wounded and his aircraft in flames, delays bailing out of his blazing machine to pursue and shoot down another enemy fighter that crosses his path. Badly burnt, he wins Fighter Command's first and only Victoria Cross. The reality of air combat was the swooping ambush, the bounce, hitting sudden, hard, and fast. Many pilots were shot down by an attacker they never saw.
I joined a squadron with a particular pilot, and I saw him going down in flames probably about 7 days later. So it is a very sobering thought that you are vulnerable to start with in your innocence. You don't really know you are, but it only needed, half a dozen flights when you came in contact with the enemy that you realize you were in a dangerous game and they were playing for keeps.
Bullet through my shoulder from the front. Had a cannon shell came in from behind and exploded on my parachute that I was sitting on. Put a lump through my foot which split my Achilles tendon, so I had minus right leg. A bullet came through the armour piercing behind and went through my watch, which annoyed me, into my hand, left hand. I had a couple skims my shins in front.
The engagement initially only lasted a couple of seconds. And then you would then break away and then attack them individually again until either you were out of ammunition or for one reason or another you weren't able to attack anything. Don't forget that we only had 15 seconds worth of ammunition in both the Hurricane and the Spitfire. So if you attacked once, twice, 3 times, most of your ammunition was expended, and then the best thing you could do is to get home and rearm, refuel, and get up again.
I suddenly saw a lot of black spots. I thought there were oil specks on the windscreen, but they rapidly turned into 109s going the opposite direction, one of which passed so low over me I could see the oil streaks on the fuselage and almost count the rivets in his wings and so on. and we passed in opposite directions. They were pretty smart and experienced, of course, and they turned around quite quickly and dived down to attack us. But the chap who attacked me missed and shot past, and so I managed to get on his tail and shoot him down, rather to my surprise. And in fact, one got a bit worried, was that his chums will have seen that and it will have made them very angry. Let's get out of here.
Several large raids target 11 groups' airfields and radar stations. Losses are very heavy on both sides. The faster Spitfires are being ordered to engage the fighter escort. Hurricane squadrons go after the bombers. Some pilots are only now realizing the implications of their actions.
When I shot down this aircraft and the rear gunner bailed out, got caught over the tail, and I saw the aircraft go in with him, dragged down. That was the first time it really got into it that I was shooting at a person. Up to that point, obviously it'd been vaguely in there, but certainly during the Battle of Britain, I was only shooting at aircraft. That there were people involved virtually didn't come into it. Even if someone bailed out, it didn't really. I was just shooting at aircraft, that's all.
Und da hat der Förster auf eigene Initiative mit unserem eigenen Sender uns gesagt, fliegt zum Tiefangriff nach Mensen. Dort sind jetzt am Boden zahlreiche englische Jäger, Spitfire und Hurricane zum Tanken und Nachtanken. Ich hatte damals eine Maschinengewehrmaschine. Ich habe aus großer Höhe geschossen und sah, wie meine Kugeln auf dem Betonboden von Menschen abgespritzt sind. Ich flog dann auf einen Tankwagen zu und habe gesehen, wie ich einen Mann getroffen hatte, der hielt den Tankschlauch zu einer Spitfire. Ich habe noch gesehen, wie der Tankwagen brannte. Ich habe gesehen, wie die Spitfire, aber ich habe auch gesehen, nach der Landung gefreut, dass ich erfolgreich war, bezogen auf die Maschinen. Aber ich habe mich schlecht gefühlt, dass ich zum ersten Mal sichtbar einen Menschen erschossen habe.
Time and again, RAF fighters were hurriedly refueled, rearmed, and returned to battle. Ground controllers attempted to vector them into favorable attacking positions amongst the countless hostile contacts.
The Germans must have been frustrated in the extreme. In other words, they must have said to one another, where the hell do they keep coming from? And of course we'd got them taped.
Casualty rates amongst the pilots and aircrew of both sides were climbing dramatically. In the fighting of the 18th of August, the RAF lost 30 fighters with 10 pilots killed. The Luftwaffe lost 71 aircraft and 94 aircrew. But the British summer was about to intervene, bringing a much-needed respite for RAF pilots, and the chance for commanders on both sides to reflect on the campaign so far. On the 19th of August, after a week of intense air combat, a spell of bad weather prevented major flying operations. Both sides took advantage of this respite to evaluate their tactics. In spite of Goering's boast to Hitler, the RAF had not succumbed. Goering, himself a fighter ace of the First World War, rebuked his fighter pilots, criticizing what he saw as their lack of aggression. He replaced the older commanders with younger, more hawkish officers.
We have reached a decisive period of the air war. Our first aim is to destroy the enemy fighters. If they no longer take to the air, we shall attack them on the ground, or force them into battle by directing bomber attacks against targets within range of our own fighters.
In Britain, Dowding, Commander-in-Chief of Fighter Command, redeployed his battered squadrons, principally those of 11 Group, which had borne the brunt of the fighting. Exhausted units were rotated with fresh squadrons from quieter sectors in the north and west.
Gentlemen, I'm pleased to say that at long last we have 12
Keith Park, commander of 11 Group, had so far orchestrated a dogged resistance with limited resources.
Red section with Sendrowski, and you're protecting us.
He had ordered controllers to send the minimum of aircraft to attack enemy fighters, emphasizing that enemy bombers must be engaged at every opportunity.
Be aware of the Hun in the sun.
Interceptions must be made quickly, before the bombers reached their targets. And he wanted squadrons from 12 Group, based in the Midlands, to patrol and protect his airfields while his squadrons were away tackling incoming raids.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. All our hearts go out to the fighter pilots, whose brilliant actions we see with our own eyes day after day. I hope, indeed I pray, that we shall not be found unworthy of our victory, if after toil and tribulation it is granted to us. For the rest, we have to gain the victory. That is our task.
But the constant challenge of aerial combat was taking its toll on the field.
The demand on pilots during 1940 was very great. The pilots in squadrons were scrambling, being scrambled almost all the day through. They were really flying their guts out.
My overriding memory of the Battle of Britain is tiredness, incredible tiredness. Because we were on readiness from half an hour before dawn in the morning until half an hour after dusk at night. In dispersal hut, we had a bunch of camp beds which just threw ourselves on and went to sleep as soon as we landed. In fact, at that stage in my life, I went to sleep standing, sitting, or wherever it was.
And we slept in our clothes, down at dispersal. Down, we actually slept underneath the wings of our aeroplanes. Otherwise, we would sleep in dispersal huts next to our aeroplanes. We very seldom slept at the mess, the officers' mess or the sergeant's mess, wherever we were located. And I don't suppose I slept in the mess more than a couple of nights in the whole of a year.
My batman shook me awake one morning, and he'd taken the blackout curtains down off the window, and he said, I suppose you were awake all night? And I said, no, why? And he said, well, look out of the window. And there was a string of bomb craters across the garden right outside the window. And I hadn't heard a bomb, I hadn't heard the anti-aircraft firing or anything. I was just asleep, and that was it.
The poor weather persists. Unable to launch full-scale raids, the Luftwaffe resort to hit-and-run sorties by small groups of aircraft. The Luftwaffe pilots too were feeling the strain of daily sorties across the waters of the Channel.
Also muss ich das Fahrwerk drin lassen und dann auf dem Bauch landen. Das Flugzeug war natürlich kaum beschädigt, nur der Motor war eben kaputt und wir haben dann das Flugzeug geborgen, neuen Motor rein und dann ging es dann nach einer gewissen Zeit wieder weiter.
Ich persönlich muss für mich sagen, ich habe nie Stress erlebt. Ich bin trotzdem ein Opfer von der Kanalkrankheit. Die deutschen Luftwaffenärzte haben schon gesprochen davon, dass denn von zu vielem Fliegen zu vielen Feindflügen kommt.
Da haben wir also keinen Zusammenbruch oder physische Reaktion gesehen, die ihm das nicht möglich macht. Im Gegenteil, er hat sich konzentriert. Er war scharf konzentriert auf die Aufgabe, die er jetzt die nächsten 1,5 Stunden zu erfüllen hat. Nicht wahr? Und man hat natürlich gewusst über die Gefährlichkeit, aber das wurde zur Gewohnheit.
The German bomber crews, who have suffered heavy losses, criticized their fighter escorts for failing to protect them. But ordered to escort bombers to targets inland, German fighter pilots had to keep a careful eye on their fuel gauges. They were accused of avoiding combat to conserve their fuel.
Und es war immer vorher vereinbart, ein Treffpunkt, sagen wir, über Krell um 4000 Meter um 10 Uhr. Und wenn wir mit den 109 um 10 Uhr in 4000 Meter über Hochkrell waren, dann kamen die Bomber nicht um 10 Uhr, sondern um 10:30 Uhr und wir hatten schon 30 Minuten Benzin verflogen, das uns später gefehlt hat. Wir haben dann langsam dazugelernt und sind erst gestartet, wenn die Bomber über den Platz waren. Und da wir schneller waren und schneller steigen konnten, haben wir sie immer erwischt.
On the 24th of August, the weather began to improve. The Luftwaffe resumes its attacks against key RAF airfields and sector stations, the heart of the defense system. Massive formations of aircraft stream towards their targets. For the RAF, the battle's most critical phase was beginning. Sheer weight of numbers frustrates the attempts of outnumbered RAF pilots to disrupt the raids. Dover and the RAF base at Manston are the first targets. 11 groups airfields and sector stations, not for the first time, are in the front line. Manston, its airfield cratered and littered with unexploded bombs, has to be abandoned. With 11 groups fighter squadrons attempting to intercept several heavy raids across the southeast of England, their airfields are left badly exposed. Urgent calls are made to 12 Group to provide cover. Squadrons from Duxford scramble, but then take precious time to gather information before heading to confront the enemy. Duxford's Big Wing, as it becomes known, arrives too late. By the end of the first day of renewed fighting, the RAF have lost 22 aircraft to the Luftwaffe's 38. But one raid was to help escalate the battle and drag the civilian population deeper into the conflict. the night of the 24th of August. A small formation of Heinkel's fly up the Thames to bomb oil installations at Thames Haven. In the darkness, they overfly their target and stray over central London. There, in direct violation of orders, they release their bombs. Fires rage at the West India dock. By this stage of the battle, more than 1,000 British civilians have been killed by the Luftwaffe in raids all over the country. Despite orders to attack only war-essential targets, it was impossible for the Luftwaffe to hit these, especially in cities, without killing civilians. The bombers were not accurate enough. But this latest provocation was the last straw. Now the British War Cabinet authorized retaliatory raids on Berlin. Early the next morning, large fighter sweeps by German aircraft over Sussex are ignored by RAF controllers. As instructed, they save their strength for the bombers that follow.
Northwest Vic Y for Yorker.
C for Charlie.
Southwest 8 1 for Edward.
By the day's end, 20 German aircraft have been destroyed for the loss of 16 RAF machines.
Wait, 20.
And that night, the RAF bombed Berlin for the first time. In the days that followed, the battles between the RAF and the Luftwaffe intensified. As another massive raid builds over France and then heads for England, Keith Park, officer commanding 11 Group, orders every squadron he has available into the air. RAF pilots have been instilled with the importance of getting airborne as quickly as possible. Every second is vital to gain sufficient altitude. Once again, 12 Group is asked to protect the southern airfields. Again, the support arrives too late. Park was furious at the lack of cooperation from 12 Group. So there could be no further misunderstandings. He instructed his controllers to ensure all future requests for support from 12 Group went via Fighter Command headquarters. Tensions were beginning to grow between the British commanders. Meanwhile, losses continued to mount. Biggin Hill, Croydon and Hornchurch are all bombed, as RAF fighters struggle to reach the bombers through a heavy screen of Me-109s. Sector stations are put out of action. As aircraft clash overhead, personnel work desperately on the ground to repair the damage to the command and control system. It was the day of the RAF's heaviest losses. 39 machines destroyed, for 41 German aircraft brought down. 14 RAF pilots were listed killed or missing. Since the battle began, 205 RAF pilots have been injured. 222 have been killed. It is a rate of loss that is becoming unsustainable. As 11 Group's airfields come in for yet more punishment, their fighter squadrons initiate large dogfights over Kent in Sussex. Aircraft factories are also under constant Luftwaffe attack. But losses to Fighter Command's fighter strength are nevertheless being made good by industry. Mounting pilot losses were the primary concern.
At the beginning, we were losing the best pilots, you know, the more experienced and the ones who'd had the experience. And then our replacements came in. And I wouldn't allow them to fly until either myself or my other flight commander. I mean, I remember I was acting CO, but I was also flight commander. One of us, Killy or myself, would take them up and give them the best we could. A camera gun and combat tactics.
Although we had a lot of new ones posted in, how can they cope? I mean, these chaps would come in and they'd sit down. They'd probably only done 7 hours on the Spitfires, if that. And they watched us taking off with everything we'd got and coming back 2 pilots short, and every time we took off, their nerves must have been shot to blazes. I don't know how they coped. I couldn't, I don't think.
Dowding was desperately worried. Deeply concerned at the loss of life amongst the young men of his fighter squadrons, he also recognized the reality behind the losses.
Pilots are no longer being produced in sufficient numbers to fill the gaps in the fighting ranks. The situation is extremely grave, it must be realized. We are going downhill.
Goering had been humiliated when bombs fell on Berlin. He had publicly promised such a thing would never happen. Hitler was furious. The landings planned for the British mainland could not take place until Goering's Luftwaffe had gained control of the air over southern England. Provoked and enraged, Hitler removed his restrictions on attacking London. He announced his intentions in front of a delighted and enthusiastic audience.
When the British Air Force drops 2 or 3 or 4 kilograms of bombs, then we will, in one night, drop 150, 230, 300 or 400,000 kilograms. In England, they are filled with curiosity and keep asking, why doesn't he come? Be calm. Be calm. He is coming. He is coming.
The Luftwaffe receives new orders. German bombers would pulverize the industrial areas of London, simultaneously destroying Britain's industrial capacity and her will to fight on. The remnants of RAF Fighter Command, believed to have been decimated in the last 3 weeks of attacks, would be destroyed in the air by fighter escorts, forced into the air to defend the nation's capital. As day dawned, the radar screens remained clear. In plotting rooms, personnel waited expectantly for reports. The familiar sight of enemy aircraft building up over the Pas de Calais was absent. Pilots began to relax at their dispersal points. But on the coast of France, there was activity. Goering had arrived to watch, in person, his mighty armada of aircraft set off to deliver the death blow to the Royal Air Force and bring death and destruction to the people of London. Over 1,000 aircraft prepared to launch the largest air attack ever made on a city. The bombers climbed into the clear skies and met in one vast formation, turning for the English coast. German fighter pilots had been increasingly accused of abandoning the bombers to their fate. Now they have new orders, to stand by the bombers at all costs.
Die Kommunikation zwischen Bomber und Jagdflugzeugen war einer der großen Schwächen der Battle of Britain. Wir hatten überhaupt keine Funkverbindung mit den Bombern. Die Bombern, die hatten ein anderes Funkgerät als wir. Und wir, Jagdflugzeuge, wir wurden eingestellt am Boden. Wir konnten unsere Frequenzen nicht verstellen.
At 4:15 in the afternoon, Goering, enjoying a picnic and champagne, watches as the immense fleet of aircraft stream overhead. Moving as one vast formation between heights of 14,000 and 23,000 feet and 20 miles in length, the aerial armada appears invincible, impregnable. With the English countryside unfolding beneath them, their target, London, was within sight.
We will rub out their cities from the map. The hour will come when one of us will break, and it will not be Nazi Germany.